The elderly woman found a girl crying at her daughter's grave, and what she heard left her horrified. The iron gate of the cemetery creaked, a sharp sound that cut through the silence of the cloudy afternoon. Mrs. Cecilia hesitated for a moment, her wrinkled hand gripping the handle of her black umbrella. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the humid, heavy air, laden with the sweet scent of decaying flowers. Her slow, deliberate steps echoed among the tombstones, the low heels of her shoes sinking slightly into the damp grass. The path was familiar, sadly familiar. 7 years had passed, but the pain of loss was still as vivid as on the first day. As she walked, Cecilia couldn't help but notice the furtive glances of the few visitors scattered around the cemetery. She knew those looks, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. After all, everyone in the small town of St. Jude knew her story, or at least thought they did. As she approached Anna's grave, her daughter, a strange sensation began to form in the pit of her stomach. Something was different. The air seemed thicker, filled with an inexplicable tension. Cecilia quickened her pace, her heart racing for no apparent reason. Then she heard it, a sound, so out of place in that silent morning environment that, for a moment, Cecilia thought she was imagining things. But there it was again, the muffled sob of a child. Rounding a bend in the path, she finally saw Anna's grave, and there, kneeling before the white marble headstone, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old, her small shoulders shaking with each sob. Cecilia froze. In 7 years, she had never found anyone at Anna's grave. Her daughter had no children, at least none that she knew of. Who was this child? Why was she crying so desperately over Anna's grave? With her heart pounding in her chest, Cecilia approached slowly. The girl, absorbed in her grief, did not notice her presence. Up close, Cecilia could see she was holding something, an old, crumpled and faded photograph. "Hello?" Cecilia called softly, her voice trembling. The girl started, turning quickly. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, widened at the sight of Cecilia. For a moment, a flicker of recognition seemed to cross her face, quickly replaced by fear. "Who are you?" Cecilia asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "Why are you crying here?" The girl hesitated, her eyes darting between Cecilia and the headstone, as if seeking an escape route. Finally, with a voice hoarse from crying, she replied, I came to see my mother." Cecilia's world seemed to spin. Mother. Impossible. Anna had no children. She would have known. Wouldn't she? "Your mother," Cecilia repeated, incredulous. "But this is my daughter Anna's grave." The girl nodded slowly, her eyes, now so familiar as Cecilia really looked, fixed on hers. "I know. Anna was my mother." The shock was like a punch to the stomach. Cecilia staggered, leaning on a nearby headstone to keep from falling. 1,000 questions exploded in her mind, each more disturbing than the last. How was this possible? Why would Anna hide a daughter from her? Who was the father? What's your name?" Cecilia managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. "Maria," the girl replied hesitantly. "Maria Cecilia." The name hit Cecilia like lightning. Her own name. Anna had given her secret daughter her mother's name. The implications were dizzying. Maria stood up slowly, still clutching the photograph to her chest. "You're my grandmother, aren't you?" she asked, her voice a mix of fear and hope. Cecilia nodded mechanically, unable to form words. Her mind was spinning, trying to process this shocking revelation. Then her eyes fell on the photograph in Maria's hands. "May I see that?" she asked, extending a trembling hand. Reluctantly, Maria handed over the photo. Cecilia examined it, her heart stopping for a moment. It was a photo of Anna, smiling radiantly, holding a newborn baby. A photo Cecilia had never seen before. "Where did you get this?" Cecilia asked, her voice barely containing the urgency. Maria hesitated, nervously biting her lip. Finally, she spoke, her words falling like bombs in the cemetery's silence. "Mommy gave it to me before she had to leave." Cecilia felt the world spin. "Leave? But Anna is—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The implications of Maria's statement were too much to process. Maria looked around nervously, as if fearing to be overheard. Then, leaning close to Cecilia, she whispered, "Grandma, there's something you need to know about Mommy's death. It wasn't an accident, and she's not really—" At that moment, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted Maria. She backed away, fear evident in her eyes. "I have to go," she said hurriedly. "They can't see me here. Please, meet me tomorrow at the city park. I'll explain everything." Before Cecilia could react, Maria turned and ran, quickly disappearing among the headstones. Cecilia stood there, paralyzed, the photograph still in her trembling hands, while her mind tried to process what had just happened. What did Maria mean? Anna wasn't really dead. Who were they? And why all this secrecy? As the first drops of rain began to fall, Cecilia looked at her daughter's grave, a question echoing in her mind. What really happened to Anna? The night following the encounter at the cemetery was a whirlwind of emotions for Mrs. Cecilia. Sitting in her favorite armchair, the photograph of Anna with the baby rested in her lap, a tangible proof that her life had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m., but sleep seemed a distant reality. Cecilia couldn't stop looking at the image of her daughter, so alive, so radiant, holding in her arms a baby she had never known. Maria Cecilia, her granddaughter. Maria's words echoed incessantly in her mind. It wasn't an accident, and she's not really what? Dead. The idea was absurd, but at the same time, it ignited a flame of hope that Cecilia struggled to contain. When the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the curtains, Cecilia was already up, anxious for the meeting at the park. She barely touched her breakfast, her stomach a knot of anxiety and anticipation. The city park of St. Jude was a green oasis in the center of the small town. On a Tuesday morning, it was practically deserted, except for a few retirees feeding the pigeons and a mother pushing a baby stroller. Cecilia sat on a bench overlooking the playground, her eyes scanning the area anxiously for Maria. The minutes dragged on, each second a torture. Then she saw her. Maria emerged from behind a large tree, looking around nervously before approaching. She was wearing a school uniform and carrying a backpack, as if she had skipped class for this meeting. "Hi, Grandma," Maria said quietly, sitting next to Cecilia. Cecilia's heart leaped at hearing the word grandma. It was strange and wonderful at the same time. "Maria," Cecilia began, her voice trembling slightly, "please, tell me everything. What did you mean yesterday? About your mother? About Anna?" Maria looked around once more before speaking, her voice no more than a whisper. "Mommy didn't die in that car accident, Grandma. It was all staged." Cecilia felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Staged? But why? How? "I don't know all the details," Maria admitted, her eyes filling with tears. "Mommy said it was to protect us, that there were dangerous people after her, after us." "Dangerous people? Who?" Cecilia asked, her mind spinning with possibilities. Maria shook her head. "She never told me exactly. She only talked about a man, someone powerful in the city, someone who wanted to hurt us." Cecilia felt a chill run down her spine. Who could be so dangerous that Anna would fake her own death? "Where is your mother now, Maria?" Cecilia asked, barely daring to breathe as she awaited the answer. Maria's eyes filled with fear. "I don't know, Grandma. I haven't seen her for 3 months. She said she had to go away for a while to keep us safe, but she promised to come back." Cecilia felt her heart break. Her daughter was alive but missing, and this child, her granddaughter, had been left behind. "Who are you living with, dear?" Cecilia asked, struggling to keep her voice calm. "With foster uncles," Maria replied. "They're nice, but—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "But what, Maria?" "They don't know the truth. No one knows. Mommy said I could only tell you if something happened to her." The fear in Maria's voice was palpable, and Cecilia felt a protective instinct she hadn't experienced in years. She put an arm around the girl's shoulders, pulling her close. "It's okay, dear. I'm here now. We'll figure out what happened to your mother together." Maria nodded, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "There's one more thing, Grandma," she said, her voice almost inaudible. Mommy left something for you. Something she said would explain everything. Cecilia felt her heart race. What? Where is it? Maria opened her backpack and pulled out a sealed brown envelope. It's here. Mommy said to only give it to you if she didn't come back in 3 months. The deadline ended yesterday. With trembling hands, Cecilia took the envelope. It was heavy, as if it contained more than just papers. Before she could open it, the sound of a car horn cut through the air. Maria jumped up, panic evident in her eyes. It's my aunt. She can't see me here, Maria exclaimed. Grandma, please, find Mommy. And be careful. They're everywhere. Before Cecilia could react, Maria was already running toward the park exit. Cecilia stood there, stunned, the heavy envelope in her hands, 1,000 questions spinning in her mind. Who were they? Why did Anna have to fake her death? And what did this envelope contain that could explain everything? Looking around nervously, Cecilia put the envelope in her bag. She needed a safe place to open it, away from prying eyes. As she walked out of the park, Cecilia couldn't help but notice a dark car parked across the street, its driver watching her intently through dark glasses. A sense of being watched enveloped her, and she quickened her pace. Maria's words echoed in her mind, they're everywhere. For the first time in years, Cecilia felt real fear, but also determination. Her daughter was alive, somewhere, possibly in danger, and she would do anything to find her. With a heavy heart and a mind full of questions, Cecilia left the park, knowing that her life would never be the same. The mystery was just beginning to unfold, and she was determined to get to the bottom of it, no matter the cost. Cecilia slammed her front door shut, her heart still racing from the conversation in the park and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Her hands trembled as she placed her bag on the kitchen table, the envelope inside weighing like lead on her conscience. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers brushing the brown paper. Part of her wanted to tear the envelope open immediately, devour its contents, and finally understand what was happening. But another part, the part still struggling to process the idea that Anna might be alive, needed a moment. With a heavy sigh, Cecilia stepped away from the bag and walked to the living room. Her eyes landed on the shelf filled with family photos, hundreds of moments frozen in time. She picked up a dusty picture frame, running her fingers over the glass to reveal Anna's smiling face on her 18th birthday. Memories flooded her mind like a torrent. "Mom, you don't understand," Anna shouted, tears of frustration streaming down her face. "I need to get out of this town. There are so many things I want to see, to experience." Cecilia sighed, trying to stay calm. "Anna, dear, you just graduated from high school. There's time for all that. Why not go to college here first and then—" "No," Anna interrupted, her eyes blazing with determination. "If I stay, I'll end up trapped here forever, like everyone else in this damn town." The words hit Cecilia like a slap. "Is that how you see our life? As a prison?" Anna hesitated, remorse crossing her face for a moment. But then she lifted her chin, defiant. "I'm going to New York, Mum, with or without your approval." That night, Cecilia heard the front door close softly and the sound of a car driving away. Anna had left, taking with her only a backpack and the dreams of a life bigger than St. Jude could offer. Cecilia blinked, returning to the present. She placed the photo back on the shelf, her heart heavy with regret. If only she had been more understanding, if she had listened more. Her eyes wandered to another photo taken 3 years later. Anna was back in St. Jude, her face thinner, her eyes carrying a maturity that wasn't there before. She was smiling, but it wasn't the same carefree smile as before. "Mom," Anna said, her voice low and urgent. "I need to tell you something." Cecilia sat down, alarmed by her daughter's tone. "What is it, dear? Are you okay?" Anna bit her lip, hesitant. I met someone in New York, someone important." Cecilia's heart leaped. Finally, Anna was opening up about her life in the city. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Who is he?" Anna's face contorted in pain. "I can't say, Mom. It's complicated. He's married." The initial shock gave way to disappointment. "Oh, Anna, don't judge me, Mom," Anna pleaded. tears shining in her eyes. "You don't understand. He's powerful, influential, and now—" Anna placed her hand over her belly, and Cecilia understood immediately. Her world seemed to spin. "You're—" Anna nodded, the tears now flowing freely. "I'm pregnant, Mom, and I'm scared, very scared." Cecilia returned to the present, her heart tight with the memory. That conversation had been the beginning of everything. The months that followed were a whirlwind of emotions: the hidden pregnancy, Maria's secret birth. And then, she picked up the last photo of Anna, taken just a week before the supposed accident. Her daughter was smiling, but her eyes were alert, almost scared. "Mum, I need you to take care of Maria for a few days," Anna said, handing the sleeping baby to Cecilia. "Of course, dear, but why? Where are you going?" Anna looked nervously out the window before answering. "I have to take care of some things. It's important. I promise I'll explain everything when I get back." Cecilia felt a knot in her stomach. "Anna, are you in danger?" For a moment, fear crossed Anna's face, but then she forced a smile. "Don't be silly, Mom. Everything will be fine. I'll be back soon." 3 days later, the police knocked on Cecilia's door with news of the accident. Cecilia placed the photo back on the shelf, her hands trembling. Everything made sense now. The fear in Anna's eyes, the hurried departure, the accident that never seemed completely real. She walked back to the kitchen, determination replacing the initial shock. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. With a decisive movement, Cecilia took the envelope from the bag. Whatever Anna had left inside, it was the key to understanding everything, to finding her daughter. Breathing deeply, she began to open the envelope, her heart pounding in her chest. Whatever she was about to discover, Cecilia knew her life would never be the same. The brown envelope lay open on the kitchen table, its contents spread out before Cecilia like pieces of an incomprehensible puzzle. There were photos, newspaper clippings, and a flash drive, but what caught her attention the most was a handwritten letter, unmistakably Anna's handwriting. With trembling hands, Cecilia began to read, "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back in time as I promised Maria. I'm so sorry for everything, the secrets, the lies, for making you believe I was dead. But you need to understand, it was the only way to keep you both safe. The man I told you about, Maria's father, is more dangerous than you can imagine. His name is—" Cecilia gasped as she read the name. Richard Johnson, the mayor of St. Jude, a respected man, married, a family man, and apparently the secret father of her granddaughter. The letter continued, revealing a web of corruption, blackmail, and threats that extended far beyond the limits of St. Jude. Anna had discovered something big enough to put her life at risk. On the flash drive, you'll find all the evidence, documents, recordings, everything I managed to gather. Don't trust anyone, Mom, especially not the police. They're involved up to their necks. If something happens to me, take all this to the journalist Matthew Roberts at the New York Times. He's the only one I trust to expose the truth. Take care of Maria. Tell her I love her more than anything. With love, Anna." Cecilia let the letter fall, her mind a whirlwind. It was too much to process all at once. Her daughter was alive, yes, but involved in something much bigger and more dangerous than she could have imagined. After a few minutes trying to calm her breathing, Cecilia decided she needed help. She couldn't face this alone, but who? Anna's letter made it clear that the police were not trustworthy. Her eyes fell on the name mentioned in the letter, Father Peter. He had always been a close family friend, someone Anna trusted. Maybe he knew something. With renewed determination, Cecilia carefully stored the envelope's contents in a safe place and headed towards the church. The St. Jude Thaddeus parish was quiet that Tuesday afternoon. Cecilia found Father Peter in the sacristy, organizing vestments. "Mrs. Cecilia," he greeted her with a warm smile, but his eyes betrayed a hint of concern. "To what do I owe the honor of your visit?" Cecilia hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "Father, I need to ask you some questions about Anna." Peter's smile faltered for a moment. "Anna? But it's been years since—" I know what everyone thinks, Cecilia interrupted, her voice low but firm. But what if I told you things are not as they seem? The ensuing silence was deafening. Peter slowly placed the vestment he was holding on a nearby table, his eyes never leaving Cecilia's. What exactly do you mean by that, Mrs. Cecilia? He asked, his voice cautious. Cecilia took a step forward, lowering her voice even more. Anna is alive, Father, and she's in danger. Peter's reaction was almost imperceptible, a slight widening of the eyes, a stiffening of the shoulders. But it was enough for Cecilia to realize he knew something. How did you find out? Peter stammered. Does it matter? What matters is that my daughter is out there somewhere in danger, and I need to find her. Peter ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking much older. Mrs. Cecilia, there are things at play here that you don't understand. Powerful forces. The Mayor Richard Johnson, Cecilia said, watching the priest's reaction closely. Peter visibly paled. Where did you hear that name? So it's true, Cecilia whispered. He's Maria's father, isn't he? The priest closed his eyes as if in pain. When he opened them again, they were filled with a mix of fear and determination. Mrs. Cecilia, listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. What you know is dangerous, very dangerous. People have died for much less. But Anna did what she had to do to protect herself and Maria. If she's out there somewhere, it's best she remains hidden. Cecilia felt the anger rising within her. How can you say that? She's my daughter. And that's exactly why you need to leave things as they are, Peter insisted. For her sake and your own. But Cecilia wasn't willing to give up. Father, please, if you know something, anything that can help me find her. Peter hesitated, clearly conflicted. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he spoke. There is a man, a private detective named Smith. He helped Anna in the past. Perhaps he can help you now. Cecilia felt a spark of hope. Where can I find him? He has an office downtown near the main square. But Mrs. Cecilia, I beg you, be careful. You're dealing with forces you don't fully understand. Cecilia nodded, grateful for the information, but still frustrated by the priest's reluctance to say more. As she turned to leave, Peter called out one last time, Mrs. Cecilia, pray a lot. You'll need all the divine protection you can get. With those ominous words echoing in her mind, Cecilia left the church, determined to find this Detective Smith. It was her best chance to find Anna, no matter the risks. As she walked through the streets of St. Jude, Cecilia couldn't help but notice how her hometown suddenly seemed strange and threatening. Behind every corner, every window, there could be eyes watching, ears listening. But none of that mattered. She would find Anna, no matter the cost, and may God help anyone who tried to stop her. Detective Smith's office was a dusty cubicle on the third floor of a rundown building. Cecilia hesitated for a moment before knocking on the faded door with the words, A. Smith, Private Investigations, painted in peeling letters. Come in, a gruff voice responded from within. Anthony Smith was a man in his 50s, with disheveled grey hair and sharp eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses. He raised his eyebrows upon seeing Cecilia. Mrs. Cecilia Almeida, he said, not getting up. I was wondering when you'd show up. Cecilia froze. You know me? Smith gestured for her to sit down. I know many things, Ma'am, including about your daughter, Anna. Cecilia's heart raced. Then you know she's alive? I did, Smith corrected, his face somber. I lost contact with her 3 months ago. Cecilia felt a knot in her stomach. It was the same period Maria had mentioned. Please, she begged, tell me everything you know. Smith sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing his tired eyes. Anna came to me about 7 years ago, shortly before she died. She was scared, said she'd discovered something big, something that put her life in danger. The corruption scheme involving the mayor, Cecilia murmured. Smith looked surprised. I see you already know quite a bit. Yes, Richard Johnson is at the center of it all, but it goes far beyond him. We're talking about a network of corruption that extends throughout the region, possibly even to the state capital. He got up, walking over to an old filing cabinet in the corner of the room. After rummaging for a few moments, He returned with a thick folder. "This is everything I've gathered over the past 7 years," he said, placing the folder on the desk. "Money laundering, bribes, even some suspicious deaths." Anna was determined to expose it all. Cecilia flipped through the documents, her horror growing with each page. How did she get involved in all this?" Smith hesitated. "That's something you need to ask her. But I can tell you it started when she was in New York." A sudden memory hit Cecilia. The man she met there. Was it Richard? Smith nodded. They met at a fundraising event. Richard was expanding his businesses to the city. Anna, well, she was young, impressionable. He seduced her with promises of power and influence. Cecilia felt nauseous. How had she not noticed? How had she been so blind? When Anna got pregnant, Smith continued, Richard panicked. An illegitimate child could ruin his political career. He tried to resolve the problem. Cecilia's blood ran cold. "You mean—" "Yes," Smith confirmed somberly. "He tried to force Anna to have an abortion. When she refused, the threats began." Silent tears streamed down Cecilia's face. Her daughter had faced all this alone, unable to trust even her own mother. "That's when Anna decided to fake her own death," Smith explained. "It was the only way to protect herself and the child." "Maria," Cecilia whispered. Smith nodded. "I helped with the arrangements. The car accident was staged. Anna assumed a new identity and moved to a small town in upstate New York. But she came back," Cecilia said. "Why?" "Because she couldn't leave things as they were," Smith replied. "Anna spent years collecting evidence, building a case against Richard and his associates. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for all their other victims." Cecilia felt a mix of pride and fear for her daughter. "And now, where is she?" Smith's face contorted with worry. "That's the problem. Our last contact was 3 months ago. She said she was about to obtain the final piece of evidence she needed, something that would incriminate not just Richard, but the entire network of corruption. And then she disappeared," Cecilia concluded, her heart heavy. Smith nodded gravely. "I've been looking for her ever since, but it's like she vanished." I'm fearing the worst." Cecilia refused to accept that possibility. "No, she's alive. She has to be." She stood up, determination shining in her eyes. "What can we do? How can we find her?" Smith seemed hesitant. "Mrs. Cecilia, this is extremely dangerous. These people won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way." "I don't care," Cecilia declared firmly. "She's my daughter. I abandoned her once. I won't do it again." Smith studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Very well. There's one place I haven't checked yet. A country house on the outskirts of town. It belongs to one of Richard's associates, but it's rarely used. If Anna needed a hideout—" "Let's go," Cecilia said, already heading for the door. "Wait," Smith stopped her. "We can't just barge in. We need to be careful, planned." Cecilia took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. "You're right. What do you suggest?" "I'll do some discreet surveillance over the next few days," Smith proposed. "In the meantime, continue your normal routine." "We don't want to raise suspicions." Cecilia nodded, though the idea of waiting any longer made her anxious. As she left Smith's office, Cecilia felt different. The weight of the secrets was crushing, but there was also a sense of purpose, of determination. As she walked back home, her eyes scanned the familiar streets of St. Jude, seeing them in a new light. How many other dark secrets were hidden behind respectable facades? How many other lives had been affected by the corruption lurking in the shadows? One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same, and Cecilia was ready to fight, no matter the cost, to bring her daughter back and expose the truth that had remained hidden for so long. The days following the visit to Smith's office were torture for Cecilia. Every minute seemed to drag on as she tried to maintain an appearance of normalcy, aware that unknown eyes might be watching. On the morning of the 3rd day, while watering the plants in her front garden, Cecilia noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. The driver seemed absorbed in a newspaper, but she could feel his furtive gaze. The feeling of being watched intensified her anxiety. That afternoon, the phone rang. It was Smith. his voice tense and low. "I found something," he said without preamble. "I need you to come to my office immediately. Be careful. Don't be followed." Cecilia's heart raced. Finally, some progress. Taking extra precautions, Cecilia took an indirect route to Smith's office, constantly checking to see if she was being followed. When she finally arrived, she found the detective agitated, pacing back and forth. "What did you find?" Cecilia asked anxiously. Smith gestured for her to sit. "I did the surveillance at the country house as planned. I didn't see any signs of Anna, but—" He paused, his face somber. "I saw Richard Johnson entering there last night. He wasn't alone." Cecilia felt her stomach churn. "Who was with him?" "A man I recognized as Charles Fisher, the police chief of St. Jude." The revelation hit Cecilia like a punch. The police chief involved. No wonder Anna didn't trust the authorities. "So that's not all," Smith continued, picking up an envelope from his desk. "I managed to get some photos." He spread the images on the desk. They were low quality, taken from a distance, but they clearly showed Richard and Charles carrying what looked like a large box into the house. "What do you think is in that box?" Cecilia asked, her voice trembling. Smith hesitated. "I can't be sure, but given the size and the care with which they were handling it, it could be—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The terrible thought had already formed in Cecilia's mind. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in denial. "It can't be. Anna." "Let's not jump to conclusions," Smith said quickly. "It might not be what we're thinking. But whatever it is, it's clearly important." Cecilia stood up abruptly. "We have to go there, now." Smith grabbed her arm. "Wait, we can't just storm the place. It's private property, and if we get caught—" "I don't care," Cecilia exclaimed. "If there's any chance Anna is there or—" She couldn't complete the thought. Smith studied her for a long moment before slowly nodding. "All right, but we'll do it right. I have a contact in the state police. Someone I trust. I'll reach out to him, see if we can get a search warrant." Cecilia reluctantly agreed, knowing it was the most sensible decision, but every fiber of her being screamed to act immediately. While Smith made his calls, Cecilia found herself staring at the photos on the desk. Her gaze was drawn to a detail she hadn't noticed before, a small shiny object falling from Richard's pocket in one of the images. "Smith," she called, pointing to the photo. "What is that?" The detective approached, adjusting his glasses to get a better look. His eyes widened in recognition. That's Anna's necklace," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Cecilia felt the world spin. The necklace, a gift she had given Anna on her 16th birthday, was unmistakable. How does Richard have it?" she asked, her voice trembling. Smith shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but this changes everything. We can't wait for a warrant anymore." Cecilia looked at him, surprised by the sudden change in attitude. "We're going tonight," Smith declared. "I'll get some tools. We'll go in when it's dark." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations and growing anxiety. When night finally fell, Cecilia found herself in the passenger seat of Smith's car, her heart pounding as they approached the country house. The property was dark and silent when they arrived. Smith parked at a safe distance, and they approached on foot, moving silently through the shadows. At the back door, Smith worked skillfully with his tools, and within minutes they were inside. The house smelled of mold and abandonment. With low-powered flashlights, they began to search the rooms, looking for any sign of Anna or the mysterious box. It was in the basement that they found something, a large locked chest, too heavy to be moved easily. "It's the right size," Smith murmured, already working on the lock. Cecilia held her breath as the lid slowly opened. Whatever they expected to find, nothing could have prepared them for the reality. The chest was full of documents, flash drives, and what looked like a ledger. On top of everything, shining under the flashlight's beam, was Anna's necklace. "My God," Smith whispered. "It's all here, all the evidence Anna collected. This is enough to bring down not just Richard, but the entire network of corruption." Cecilia picked up the necklace with trembling hands, silent tears streaming down her face. It was tangible proof that Anna had been there. But where was she now? Before they could fully process what they had found, A noise from upstairs froze them in place. Footsteps. Someone had entered the house. Smith quickly turned off the flashlights, plunging them into darkness. "Stay quiet," he whispered to Cecilia. The footsteps approached the basement door. Cecilia held her breath, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure whoever it was could hear it. The doorknob began to turn slowly. Time seemed to freeze as the basement door opened slowly. Cecilia felt Smith move silently beside her, positioning himself protectively. The beam of a flashlight cut through the darkness, and a familiar voice filled the air. "Mom, Mr. Smith." Cecilia nearly fainted with relief. "Anna?" she whispered, incredulous. The flashlight's beam focused on them, and there she was, Anna, alive and seemingly well, though with deep circles under her eyes and an expression of exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" Anna asked, her voice a mix of relief and worry. Before Cecilia could respond, Smith intervened. "Diana, we don't have time. Someone might have followed you. We need to get out of here now." Anna nodded quickly. "You're right. Grab the chest. We have to go." With combined effort, they managed to carry the heavy chest out of the house and to Smith's car. Anna guided them to a back road away from town. After about half an hour of tense silence, Anna finally spoke. "Guy, we can stop here. It should be safe for now." Smith parked the car in a small clearing, hidden from the main road. As soon as the engine was off, Cecilia turned to her daughter. "Anna," she began, her voice choked with emotion. We thought... Anna took her mother's hand, squeezing it gently. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry for all of this. I wanted to tell you, but it was too dangerous." "Why did you come back?" Smith asked. "I thought we agreed you would stay hidden." Anna sighed deeply. "I couldn't stand by any longer, not with everything I've discovered." She looked at the chest in the back seat. "Those documents, they're explosive. They show not just the corruption in St. Judah, but a network that extends to the state government." Cecilia felt a chill run down her spine. "Is that why Richard and the police chief were at the house?" Anna nodded. "They found out I was back. They're desperate to get those documents back." She paused, her face contorting in pain. They took Maria." Cecilia's heart stopped. "What? How?" "I left her with a trusted family when I came back," Anna explained, tears forming in her eyes. "But somehow, Richard found her. He's using her as leverage to force me to hand over the documents." Smith cursed softly. "That complicates things." "What are we going to do?" Cecilia asked, feeling helpless. Anna took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I have a plan, but it's risky. I'm going to pretend to agree to the exchange, the documents for Maria. But in reality, we're going to use the opportunity to catch them red-handed." "It's too dangerous," Cecilia protested. "What if something goes wrong?" "It's our best chance," Smith interjected. "If we hand over the evidence, we lose everything. And we can't trust that they'll actually release Maria." Cecilia knew they were right, but the fear for her daughter and granddaughter consumed her. How can we be sure Maria is okay? Anna took out her phone, showing a recent message. "Richard sent me this as proof of life. She's scared but unharmed." Smith leaned forward, his face serious. "We need to act fast. The longer Maria stays with them, the more dangerous it becomes." Anna nodded. "The exchange is set for tomorrow night, at the old warehouse on the outskirts of town." "We need reinforcements," Cecilia said. "We can't do this alone." "Agreed," Smith replied. "I have some trusted contacts in the state police. I can bring them in without raising suspicion." Anna seemed hesitant. "Are you sure we can trust them?" Smith nodded firmly. "With my life, they're not involved in the local corruption." As they discussed the details of the plan, Cecilia found herself watching her daughter. Anna had changed so much over the years, not the impulsive young woman who had left St. Jude in search of adventure. There was now a hardness in her eyes, a determination forged by years of struggle and secrets. "Anna," Cecilia said softly, interrupting the conversation. "I'm sorry. For not being there for you, for not realizing..." Anna squeezed her mother's hand again. "No, Mum. It's not your fault. I should have trusted you from the beginning. Maybe if I had..." There's no use thinking about what-ifs, Smith interrupted gently. What matters is what we do now. Cecilia took a deep breath, feeling a determination she hadn't experienced in years. You're right. Let's bring Maria back and end this once and for all. Anna smiled, a tired but genuine smile. Together? Together, Cecilia confirmed. As the sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, the three of them started finalizing their plan. The next day would bring the confrontation that would change their lives forever. Cecilia knew the dangers were immense, but for the first time in years she felt hope. No matter what happened, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, they could finally right the wrongs of the past and build a better future, for them and for all of St. Jude. The day of the exchange dawned with a palpable tension in the air. Cecilia, Anna, and Smith had spent the night in a small motel on the outskirts of St. Jude, away from prying eyes. The simple room had been transformed into an improvised operations center, with maps spread out on the table and the contents of the chest carefully organized. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on a photo of Maria. Cecilia approached, placing a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We'll get her back," Cecilia said softly. "Can you promise?" Anna nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, it's just that, what if something goes wrong? What if—" "We can't think like that," Smith interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "We need to focus on the plan." At that moment, someone knocked on the door. Everyone froze, exchanging anxious glances. Smith signaled for them to stay quiet as he approached the door, one hand on his gun. "Who is it?" he asked. "It's me, Peter," came the response. "Father Peter." Cecilia and Anna exchanged surprised looks. What was the priest doing there? Smith cautiously opened the door, revealing Father Peter, looking nervous and out of place in his black cassock. "How did you find us?" Anna asked, standing up. Peter entered the room, closing the door behind him. "It wasn't easy, but I have my own resources." He hesitated, looking at each of them. I came to help." Cecilia frowned. "Help? How?" Peter took a deep breath. "I know about your plan. The exchange and the confrontation with Richard. How?" Smith demanded, his hand going back to his gun. "Calm down," Peter said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "I have sources within Richard's organization, sources who want to see the end of this as much as you do." Anna stepped forward, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and distrust. "What kind of sources?" Peter hesitated again before responding. "Lower-level employees, mainly. People who were forced to participate in Richard's schemes out of fear or necessity. They're willing to testify, to provide additional evidence." Smith seemed skeptical. "And why should we trust them? Or you, for that matter?" The priest lowered his eyes, guilt evident on his face. I haven't been completely honest with you before. I knew more than I revealed, much more." Cecilia felt a wave of anger. "You knew all along, about Anna, about Maria." Peter nodded slowly. "Yes. Anna came to me before she died. So I helped her organize everything." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with conflicting emotions. "Why didn't you tell us?" Cecilia finally asked, her voice trembling. "Because I was afraid," Peter admitted, shame evident in his voice. "Richard has eyes and ears everywhere. I feared what might happen if I spoke. But now—" He looked at Anna, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. "Now I know I can't stay silent any longer. Not when an innocent child is in danger." Anna studied the priest for a long moment before speaking. "What exactly are you offering, Peter?" "Information," he responded promptly. "I know exactly where Richard is keeping Maria. And more importantly, I know of a secret passage in the warehouse where the exchange is set to take place, one that Richard doesn't know about." Smith leaned forward, interested. "That could change everything." "Yes," Anna agreed, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "First, we could position your contacts from the state police there, catch them completely by surprise." Cecilia, however, still seemed hesitant. "How can we be sure this isn't a trap?" Peter turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. "Because I'll go with you, I'll be there, risking my own life. It's the least I can do to make up for my mistakes." There was a moment of silence as everyone processed the priest's offer. Finally, Anna spoke. "All right, let's hear what you have to say." The following hours were spent readjusting the plan, incorporating the new information provided by Peter. The secret passage offered a crucial strategic advantage, allowing them to position forces to surround Richard and his men. As they worked, Cecilia couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere had changed. The tension was still there, but now mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time since this madness began, she felt they truly had a chance. As the afternoon progressed, the final preparations were made. Smith left to meet with his contacts in the state police, while Anna and Peter reviewed the details of the warehouse layout one last time. Cecilia found herself alone for a moment, looking out the motel window at the setting sun. In a few hours, they would face Richard and his thugs. In a few hours, the fate of her family and the entire town would be decided. "Mom." Anna's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Are you all right?" Cecilia turned, meeting her daughter's worried eyes. "Yes, dear, just thinking." Anna approached, taking her mother's hands in hers. "You know, it's not too late for you to stay out of this. You don't need to risk yourself." Cecilia shook her head firmly. "No way. We're a family. We face this together." A shy smile appeared on Anna's face. "Together," she repeated. At that moment, Smith returned, his face serious. "Everything's ready. It's time to go." Cecilia took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and determination. As she grabbed her bag and prepared to leave, she cast one last look at the motel room. Somehow she knew that when she returned, if she returned, nothing would be the same. With a final nod to Anna, she followed the group outside. Night had fallen, and with it, the moment of truth was approaching. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Cecilia was ready to face whatever came, for her family and for the long-denied justice. The night was exceptionally dark as the group arrived at the outskirts of the old warehouse. The silence was broken only by the distant sound of crickets and the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. Cecilia felt her heart pounding against her chest as she watched Anna and Smith make the final adjustments to their communication equipment. "Remember," Smith whispered, "the state police team is in position. At my signal, they'll enter through the secret passage Father Peter showed us." Anna nodded, her face a mask of determination. "Dad, I'll be inside, pretending to make the exchange with Richard." Cecilia felt a knot in her stomach. "Are you sure I can't go with you?" "No, Mom," Anna replied firmly. "It's too risky. You stay here with Smith and Peter." Reluctantly, Cecilia agreed. She hugged Anna tightly, whispering, "Be careful, my daughter." With one last look back, Anna disappeared into the shadows, heading towards the warehouse's main entrance. The minutes that followed seemed to drag on for an eternity. Cecilia watched anxiously, straining her ears to catch any sound. Suddenly, Anna's voice crackled over the radio. "I'm inside. Richard is here with 2 men, Maria." Her voice faltered for a moment. "Maria is here too." Cecilia felt her heart leap. Her granddaughter was there, so close. "Where's the chest?" Richard's deep voice echoed over the radio. "First, release my daughter," Anna demanded. There was a moment of palpable tension before Richard responded, "Very well." "Release the girl." The sound of small, quick footsteps was heard, followed by Maria's frightened voice. "Mommy." "It's all right, dear." Anna tried to calm her. "Now, Richard, your turn." "The chest." "Anna," Richard insisted. "Where is it?" "Right here," Anna replied. The sound of something heavy being dragged echoed over the radio. At that moment, Smith gave the signal. "Now." Cecilia watched, her heart in her throat, as the police officers moved silently towards the secret passage. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until it wasn't. A sharp scream cut through the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. "Anna!" Cecilia screamed, her body moving on its own towards the warehouse. Smith tried to hold her back, but she broke free, running towards the danger. Behind her, she could hear the hurried footsteps of Smith and Peter. The interior of the warehouse was chaos. Police officers exchanged gunfire with Richard's men, while Anna crouched behind some boxes, shielding Maria with her body. Cecilia ran towards them, ignoring the danger. "Anna! Maria!" It was then that it happened. Amid the confusion, Richard emerged from behind a pile of crates, his gun pointed directly at Anna and Maria. "It's over, Anna," he growled. "You should never have come back." Time seemed to slow down. Cecilia saw Richard's finger on the trigger, saw the terror in her daughter and granddaughter's eyes. Without thinking, she threw herself in front of them. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Cecilia braced herself for the impact, for the searing pain that would follow, but it never came. When she opened her eyes, she saw Richard falling to the ground, blood spreading from a wound in his chest. Standing behind him, holding a smoking gun, was Father Peter. "Peter!" Cecilia gasped, incredulous. The priest let the gun drop from his hands, his face a mix of shock and relief. I couldn't let him hurt anyone else." But the greatest surprise was yet to come. As the police moved to secure the scene, Maria broke free from Anna's arms and ran to Richard's side. "Daddy!" she cried, kneeling beside him. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Anna, who looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. "Anna," Cecilia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Say what is happening." Anna closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. When she opened them, there was a mixture of shame and determination. "I'm sorry," she began. "I've lied to all of you." Her next words fell like bombs in the silent warehouse. "Richard isn't the villain in this story, he's my husband. And we've been working together to expose the real corruption network controlling St. Jude." Cecilia felt the world spin. "But the accident, your death, all staged," Anna admitted. "We needed everyone to believe I was dead so we could investigate without raising suspicion." "But the threats, the corruption," Smith stammered, clearly struggling to process the information. Richard, still conscious but weak, spoke up. "All part of our cover. The real criminals are far more powerful and dangerous than you can imagine." It was then that Father Peter stepped forward, his face a mask of guilt. "He's right. I was one of them. Or I was." All heads turned to the priest in shock. "The church has been used to launder money for years," Peter confessed. "I was coerced into participating, but seeing Anna and Richard's courage, I couldn't continue." Cecilia sat down heavily, her mind reeling from the revelations. All this time, all the anguish and fear, all based on an elaborate lie. "Why?" she finally managed to ask, looking at her daughter. "Why didn't you trust me?" Anna knelt beside her mother, tears in her eyes. "I wanted to tell you, Mom, but the fewer people who knew the truth, the safer it was for everyone, especially for Maria." As paramedics arrived to attend to Richard and the police began organizing the scene, Cecilia found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. Relief that her family was safe, anger at the deception, and overwhelming confusion about what would happen next. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same in St. Jude. The truth, shocking and unexpected as it was, had finally come to light, and with it, the promise of a new beginning, for the town, for her family, and for Cecilia herself. The dawn found Cecilia sitting in a waiting room at the local hospital, her hands clutching a cold cup of coffee. The past few hours had been a whirlwind of activity. Paramedics attending to Richard, police taking statements, and a flood of questions that seemed endless. Anna sat beside her, Maria asleep in her lap. Smith paced back and forth, speaking quietly on the phone with his contacts in the state police. Father Peter had been taken for questioning, his confession opening a Pandora's box of new investigations. "Mrs. Almeida?" A gentle voice interrupted Cecilia's thoughts. It was a doctor, his face tired but kind. "Your son-in-law is out of danger." "The surgery was successful." Cecilia nodded mechanically, still struggling to associate the word son-in-law with Richard Johnson. Anna let out an audible sigh of relief. "Can we see him?" "Soon," the doctor replied. "He's still in recovery, but he should be moved to a room in a few hours." As the doctor left, a heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Cecilia turned to her daughter. "Anna," she began, her voice trembling, "I need to understand everything." Anna nodded slowly, adjusting Maria in her arms. I know, Mom. You deserve the whole truth. In the minutes that followed, Anna unraveled a story that seemed straight out of a spy novel. She explained how during her time in New York, she had discovered evidence of a vast corruption network extending from St. Jude to the highest levels of state government. Richard was a young prosecutor at the time, Anna continued. He was investigating the same case, but from a different angle. We met during the investigation and, well, things evolved from there. Cecilia struggled to reconcile this image of Richard with the villain she had imagined for so long. But why all the staging? Why make me believe you were dead? Anna lowered her eyes, guilt evident on her face. The deeper we got into the investigation, the more dangerous it became. We found out people were being silenced, evidence destroyed. We realized the only way to continue was to make everyone believe I was dead, including you, Mom, so I could work behind the scenes without raising suspicion. And Richard maintained his public position, Smith interjected, hanging up the phone, acting as if he were part of the corruption to gain the trust of the real criminals. Cecilia shook her head, trying to process everything. But Maria, how does she fit into all this? Maria wasn't part of the initial plan, Anna admitted softly. But when I found out I was pregnant, Richard and I decided it was an opportunity to strengthen our cover. Ant's extramarital affair and an illegitimate child were exactly the kind of scandal the corrupt would love to use as leverage. So, all this time, Cecilia began. All this time we were building a case, Anna completed. Collecting evidence, identifying the key players. Father Peter was a surprise to us too. We didn't know how deep the corruption went in the local church. Smith, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke. What happens now? Do we have enough evidence to bring down the entire operation? Anna nodded slowly. With Father Peter's confession and the evidence we've collected over the years, yes, but it won't be easy. We're talking about powerful people, with connections at all levels of government. At that moment, Maria stirred, opening her sleepy eyes. Mommy, is Daddy going to be okay? Anna hugged her daughter tightly. Yes, dear. Daddy is going to be fine. Cecilia watched the scene, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Anger at the deception, relief that her family was safe, and overwhelming pride in her daughter's courage and determination. What happens to St. Jude now? Cecilia asked quietly. Anna exchanged a look with Smith before answering. It's going to be a long and difficult process. Many people will be affected when the truth comes out. But it's necessary. This town deserves a new beginning. Smith nodded in agreement. I'm already in contact with the state's anti-corruption task force. They'll be here in a few hours to start a full investigation. As the sun fully rose, bathing the waiting room in golden light, Cecilia found herself reflecting on the future. The road ahead would be difficult, full of painful revelations and drastic changes. But for the first time in years, there was real hope that St. Jude could become the place it was always meant to be. Mom, Anna's voice pulled her from her thoughts. I know I've asked a lot of you, that I hurt you deeply with my lies. Do you think you can forgive me one day? Cecilia looked at her daughter, at the granddaughter she barely knew, and felt a wave of love so strong it almost overwhelmed her. Oh, Anna, she said, pulling them into a hug. I've already forgiven you. Now let's rebuild our family and our town together. As the embrace lingered, Cecilia knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as it always should have been. The weeks following the confrontation at the warehouse were a whirlwind of activity in St. Jude. The state's anti-corruption task force descended on the town like a storm, sifting through documents, interrogating suspects, and uncovering decades of buried secrets. Cecilia watched it all with a mix of fascination and horror. Each new day brought shocking revelations: local politicians involved in bribery schemes, businessmen manipulating bids. Even the former principal of the elementary school was arrested for embezzling funds. Amid all this chaos, Cecilia found herself in an unexpected role, as a bridge between the investigators and the community. Her reputation for integrity and her new status as Anna's mother, now seen as a local hero, put her in a unique position to calm tensions and facilitate the transition. Richard, still recovering in the hospital, cooperated fully with the authorities. His position as an insider provided crucial information that was dismantling the corruption network piece by piece. One afternoon, while visiting Richard in the hospital, Cecilia finally had the chance for an honest conversation with her son-in-law. "Why did you choose this path?" she asked, sitting beside his bed. "It must have been easier to just ignore the corruption, to move on with your career." Richard smiled sadly. "Easier, yes, but not right. When I met Anna and saw her passion for justice, I realized I couldn't stand by and watch our town sink into corruption." Cecilia nodded slowly, beginning to see Richard in a new light. "And all this time, you knew how much we were suffering, believing Anna was dead." The pain was evident in Richard's eyes. Yes, and it was the hardest part of all this. "There were so many times I wanted to tell the truth, especially after Maria was born. But the risk was too great," Cecilia finished, finally understanding the depth of the sacrifice they had made. Meanwhile, Anna divided her time between cooperating with the investigations and trying to rebuild her relationship with Cecilia and Maria. Nights often found them gathered in Cecilia's old house, sharing meals and stories, filling the gaps of 7 years of separation. One night, after putting Maria to bed, Anna found Cecilia on the porch, gazing thoughtfully at the stars. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Anna asked softly, sitting beside her. Cecilia smiled, a bittersweet smile. "How things have changed. How they're still changing." Anna took her mother's hand. "I know it hasn't been easy, all this truth coming out at once." "It hasn't been easy," Cecilia agreed. "But it's been necessary. You know, for years I lived in a bubble of grief and anger. Now it's like I'm waking up to a new world. Scary, yes, but also liberating." The two sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the quiet of the night. "What happens now?" Cecilia finally asked. "After all the investigations are over, after the dust settles." Anna took a deep breath. "Richard and I have talked about it. We think it would be best for everyone if we moved away, at least for a while. A fresh start, away from all the eyes and whispers." Cecilia felt her heart tighten. "You're leaving, but I just got you back." "Oh, Mom," Anna said, hugging her. "Not forever, just until things calm down here, and we wanted to ask you, would you like to come with us?" The proposal took Cecilia by surprise. Leaving St. Jude, the town had been her home all her life. But looking at her daughter, thinking of her granddaughter sleeping inside, she realized that her true home was where her family was. "Yes," she replied, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. "Yes, I would love to go with you." In the months that followed, St. Jude underwent a transformation. With the old corrupt guard removed, new leaders emerged, bringing promises of transparency and real change. The community, initially shocked and disbelieving, slowly began to come together, determined to rebuild their town on more solid foundations. Epilogue. A new beginning. 5 years had passed since that fateful night at the warehouse. Cecilia was back in St. Jude for the first time, driving through familiar yet strangely new streets, where once there were dilapidated buildings, now stood parks and community centers. The old town hall, once a symbol of corruption, had been transformed into a museum dedicated to the town's history, including the recent events that had changed everything. Cecilia parked in front of the cemetery, the same place where this journey had begun. Anna, Richard, and Maria waited for her at the gate. "Ready, Grandma?" Maria asked, now a vibrant teenager, so different from the frightened child Cecilia had found years ago. Cecilia nodded, taking her granddaughter's hand. Together, they walked to a familiar spot, Anna's false grave. "It feels strange to be here," Anna commented, looking at her own headstone. "Knowing it could have been real." Richard hugged his wife, but it wasn't. "We're all here, together." Cecilia watched her family, feeling a wave of gratitude. The last few years hadn't been easy. The change, adjusting to a new life, the occasional media appearances when new details of the case came to light, but through it all, they had remained united. "You know," Cecilia said, breaking the silence. For years I came here, talking to a daughter I thought I had lost. And now we're all here, talking about a future we almost didn't have, Anna completed, hugging her mother. As they left the cemetery, Cecilia noticed the subtle changes in the town. People walking with heads held high, smiles more frequent, a general sense of hope in the air. "The town feels lighter," she commented. Richard nodded, assent. "Jude has been through a lot, but it's healing. The people here are resilient." They stopped in front of Cecilia's old house. A young couple was in the garden, playing with a small child. "Do you miss it?" Anna asked softly. Cecilia smiled, looking at her family. "Sometimes, but I've learned that home isn't a place, it's the people you're with." As they returned to the car, ready to head back to their new life, Cecilia reflected on the incredible journey they had been through, from an imagined tragedy to a real triumph, from dark secrets to a liberating truth. Jude would always be part of who they were, a reminder of what they had overcome and what they had achieved. But their future, bright, full of possibilities, lay ahead. "Where to now?" Maria asked excitedly from the back seat. Cecilia smiled, starting the car. "Home, dear, we're going home." As they left St. Jude behind, the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink. It was a new dawn, not just for the town, but for Cecilia and her family. A reminder that, no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes, bringing with it the promise of a new day, a new beginning. And so, with hearts full of hope and eyes set on the future, they moved forward together towards the next chapter of their lives.